My name is Sloane, and I never thought the two people I trusted the most would be the ones to break me. I always believed my best friend was more like a sister than just a friend. I always believed my husband was my safe place in a world that never made sense. But trust has a cruel way of teaching you lessons you never wanted to learn, and betrayal doesn't creep in quietly. It explodes in your face when you least expect it. It shatters your heart into pieces too sharp to pick up again, leaves you standing in the ruins of your own life, wondering how you didn't see it coming. That night felt like any other night when I pulled into the driveway. I had stayed late at the office working on a project that finally got me recognition from my boss. I remember smiling the whole drive home, thinking maybe things were finally falling into place, thinking maybe I could finally breathe again. But little did I know, the moment I walked through that front door, my life would split into before and after. The house was darker than usual when I stepped inside. The silence wrapped around me like a warning. I didn't understand yet. I thought maybe he had gone to bed early. I thought maybe she had already left after one of her visits. Because yes, my best friend was always around. She knew the code to the house. She could come and go whenever she wanted. I never minded. I trusted her with everything, from my secrets to my kitchen to my family. She was supposed to be my other half, in a world that often felt too cruel. I set my bag down and slipped off my shoes. That's when I noticed it, a pair of heels sticking out from under my bed at the end of the hallway. Not mine, not his, but hers. The same pair she wore last week when we went shopping together. The same pair she bragged about finding on sale. And now they were hiding under my bed like guilty evidence left behind. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. My body froze, but my mind screamed, No, it can't be. Maybe she forgot them last time. Maybe she changed here before we went out. Maybe I'm overthinking. But deep down, I knew before I even took another step, that the truth waiting for me was uglier than any excuse I could make up. I forced myself forward. Every step felt heavier than the last. The hallway stretched in front of me, like it never wanted me to reach the end. My pulse hammered so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. But then, I heard them. Laughter. Soft and intimate. The kind of laugh he used to save only for me. The kind of laugh that belonged to our late-night conversations in bed. And now, it was echoing through my house with her. I wanted to run, but my body kept moving. I wanted to wake up from the nightmare, but reality pushed me forward. My hand shook as it wrapped around the doorknob. The cold metal bit into my skin, reminding me this was real. Too real. I turned it slowly, praying for a miracle. But when the door opened, I saw the truth. There they were, together. Her arms around him, his lips against her neck. Both of them frozen in shock for a second when they saw me standing there, but not frozen enough to erase what they had done. The air in the room collapsed around me. The silence screamed louder than any words could, and then she smirked. She actually smirked. Like this was some twisted game she had won, like destroying me was her trophy. The friend I once called my sister was now my enemy dressed in betrayal. Her eyes held no guilt, only mockery, only arrogance, only cruelty. My husband stammered. His face drained of color, his body stiff as a statue. He looked at me like a man caught between fear and shame, but not remorse. Never remorse. Because men like him never feel regret until consequences stand right in front of them. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things across the room. I lifted my phone instead. And with the calmness of a woman who had nothing left to lose, I let my voice slice through the air like a blade. Perfect. I just sent this video to her husband and to my lawyer. Her smirk vanished instantly. The confidence slipped off her face faster than a mask ripped away. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She wasn't smirking now. She was drowning in panic. Husband froze too. His jaw locked, his eyes wide. He looked like he had just seen his own future collapse in front of him. And that was the moment. I realized something I never understood before. Revenge doesn't always need shouting. It doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it just needs timing. Sometimes it just needs evidence. Sometimes it just needs one sentence to turn their entire world upside down. That night was the death of my marriage and the burial of my friendship. But it was also the birth of a new me. The me who walked away stronger than the girl who walked in. The me who learned that betrayal may break your heart, but it also builds your fire. And as I closed the door behind me, leaving them in silence, I knew this was only the beginning of my story. When I stepped out of that room, my legs felt like they were carrying the weight of the entire world, but somehow I didn't collapse. Somehow I didn't let the shaking inside of me show on the outside. Because strength doesn't always mean not feeling pain. Sometimes it means walking through the pain without letting them see you break. And that was exactly what I did as I walked down the hallway, leaving the two people who had just destroyed my trust behind me. I went straight to the kitchen and leaned against the counter. The cool surface against my palms grounded me. My phone buzzed in my hand and I looked down at the screen. The video had already sent. Her husband had it now. My lawyer had it too. There was no undo button. There was no turning back. And strangely enough, that thought gave me comfort. Because for once the control wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. I thought about calling my mom, but stopped myself. She always told me marriage meant forgiveness. She always said love was about patience. But what I had just seen wasn't love. It wasn't marriage. It wasn't something forgiveness could fix. It was betrayal so deep it dug into the bones of who I was. And I knew if I called her right now, she would tell me to calm down, to think it through. But this wasn't about thinking anymore. It was about finally standing up for myself. I walked to the closet in the guest room and pulled out a suitcase. My hands moved on autopilot. Folding clothes, packing shoes, grabbing the essentials I would need for the next few days. Every zip of the suitcase felt like I was closing another chapter. Every item I packed was another reminder that I was not coming back to this house as his wife. Not ever again. Halfway through, packing, I heard footsteps behind me. It was him. Of course, it was him. He stood in the doorway, like a ghost. Silent, frozen. His eyes wide with panic. "Sloane, wait," he whispered, but his voice cracked as if even he didn't believe what he was saying. Didn't look at him. I didn't need to, because nothing he could say would erase what I had seen. "You think you can just walk away like this?" he finally said louder. And that was the moment I turned to face him. "Yes," I said. "Exactly like this." I snapped. The suitcase shut and dragged it across the floor. His mouth opened, but no words followed. He looked like a man watching his whole life slip through his fingers. And I wanted to feel sorry for him, but I couldn't. Because sympathy has no place for someone who digs knives into your back. I brushed past him and walked toward the door. My phone buzzed again in my pocket and I glanced down. A message from her husband. "What is this? Why are you sending me this?" My heart twisted because I knew his life had just shattered too. He was an innocent casualty in this war. I never asked to fight, but at least he deserved to know the truth. He deserved to see the faces of betrayal, just like I had. As I opened the front door, I could hear her voice from the bedroom, screaming at him, accusing him of ruining everything. I almost laughed at the irony. She destroyed my marriage, and now she was worried about hers. The hypocrisy was suffocating, but I didn't stop to watch them crumble. That was their mess now, not mine. Never again mine. The night air hit me like a wave when I stepped outside, cool, heavy. But freeing, I dragged my suitcase to the car and tossed it in the back seat. I sat behind the wheel for a long moment, just breathing. The tears finally started to fall. But I didn't wipe them away, because those tears weren't weakness. They were release. They were proof that I had survived the worst, and was still breathing. I started the car and pulled out of the driveway without looking back. The house that once felt like home was now just a building full of lies, and I wasn't going to let myself be trapped there. Another second. The road stretched out in front of me like a promise that there was more waiting for me, beyond betrayal. A promise that my story wasn't ending here. It was just beginning. I drove until the city lights blurred into the distance. I didn't even know where I was going. I just knew it had to be away from them, away from the poison that had been living in my own house. Every mile I put between us felt like another chain breaking off me. Every turn of the wheel felt like a step closer to freedom. When I finally pulled into a motel parking lot, I killed the engine and sat in silence. The quiet felt different here. Not heavy, not suffocating, but calm. Peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. I checked my phone again. Dozens of missed calls from him. Several texts from her. All ignored, because none of their words mattered anymore. Dropped the phone onto the passenger seat and whispered to myself, "This is not the end, Sloane. This is the start of everything." And with that, I grabbed my suitcase, checked into a room and closed the door behind me. For the first time in forever, was truly alone, and for the first time in forever, that felt like power. The motel room smelled like cheap detergent and stale air, but to me it felt like sanctuary. I set my suitcase by the wall and sat on the edge of the bed. For the first time that night, the silence didn't crush me. It held me like a blanket. I breathed deep and let my body sink into the mattress. I wasn't safe yet, but I was away. And that was enough. My phone buzzed again on the nightstand. Another call from him. Another voicemail I would never listen to. Another text from her filled with excuses and lies. Please let me explain. Please don't ruin this for me. As if she was the one who had been hurt. As if I was the villain in her twisted story. I turned the phone face down and closed my eyes. But sleep didn't come. Memories did. Flashes of our wedding. Her standing by my side as maid of honor. Her holding my bouquet. Her whispering that I looked like the happiest bride in the world. And then later, the nights she stayed over when he was out of town. The laughs we shared in my kitchen. The wine bottles we emptied together. Every single moment twisted now like a knife in my chest. I sat up again and grabbed the phone. I opened the video and watched the seconds replay. Her nails on his skin, his hands gripping her waist. Her smirk when she saw me. The sound of my own voice cutting through the betrayal. Perfect. I just sent this video to her husband and to my lawyer. I watched it 3 times in silence. Each time my anger grew sharper. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was fuel. Her husband hadn't replied after his first shocked message. I wondered what he was doing now. Was he pacing his house the way I paced this motel room? Was he throwing questions at the walls with no answers? Was he blaming himself or blaming her? Either way, his life had just split apart like mine, and part of me wanted to reach out to hear the voice of someone who understood this pain. But another part of me knew we both needed distance, at least for tonight. Instead, I called my lawyer. It was late, but he answered. I told him everything. The betrayal, the video, the humiliation. He listened quietly and then said the words that steadied me. You've got proof, Sloan. You don't need to beg for freedom. You'll walk into court with evidence no one can deny. His calm voice was like water on fire. For the first time since I opened that bedroom door, I felt like I had control again. After the call, I opened the blinds and stared out at the empty parking lot. A couple argued near a soda machine. A truck pulled in with headlights too bright, but none of it mattered. The world outside kept moving while mine had stopped. And yet I realized something important. Even if they broke me tonight, they didn't end me. I was still here. Breathing, planning, living. I whispered to myself over and over. You are not done. You are not broken. You are not theirs to destroy. Every repetition built a wall inside me. A wall stronger than the lies they wrapped around me for months. A wall that would carry me through. The days ahead, I finally lay back down and closed my eyes, and in that darkness, I made a promise. Tomorrow I will not hide. Tomorrow I will not cry in silence. Tomorrow I will fight. Because sometimes revenge isn't about screaming at the ones who hurt you. Sometimes it's about walking into the light with proof in your hands. Sometimes it's about showing the world exactly who they really are. And as exhaustion finally pulled me under, I saw their faces one last time. Her smirk fading into fear, his body frozen in shame. And I thought, good. Let them stay frozen there forever while I keep moving forward. The morning sun bled through the thin motel curtains and dragged me out of uneasy sleep. For a moment, I forgot where I was. For a moment, I thought I was still home. But then, reality hit me like a train. The betrayal wasn't a nightmare. It was real. It was my life now. And today was the day I would start turning that reality into power. I showered quickly and dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. No makeup, no effort to hide the exhaustion on my face. I didn't need to look strong. I just needed to be strong. I grabbed my phone and saw a flood of notifications, missed calls from him, texts from her ranging from desperate apologies to venom-filled insults. How could you do this to me? Why would you ruin everything? As if she hadn't ruined it first. As if I was supposed to protect her after she destroyed me. I blocked her number without hesitation. Then I saw a new message from her husband. Can we talk? Just 3 words, but heavy with pain. I hesitated before replying. Meet me at the cafe. On Main at noon, neutral ground, public enough to feel safe, private enough to share the wreckage of our lives. He agreed instantly. Before noon, I drove to my lawyer's office. I handed him the video. He watched it once and sighed. This is solid, Sloan. He said, we'll move fast. Adultery this clear gives you leverage. Leverage for property. Leverage for settlement. Leverage for freedom. His words steadied me like anchors in a storm. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about strategy. It was about building the life I deserved from the ashes of betrayal. By the time I walked into the cafe, my chest felt lighter. Her husband was already there. A tall man with tired eyes and a coffee untouched in front of him. He looked up when he saw me, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Because what words can fill the space after discovering betrayal this deep? Finally, he said, "Thank you. Not angry, not bitter. Just tired. Thank you for telling me." I nodded, because there wasn't much else to say. We talked for an hour. He told me about the late nights she claimed she was with me, the excuses she made about girls' trips that never happened, the lies layered so perfectly he never questioned them. Until now. Hearing his story was like looking into a mirror. We were both victims of the same deception. We were both casualties of their selfish game, at one point. He asked what I planned to do. I told him the truth. I had already spoken to my lawyer. I was moving forward with divorce. I was done. He nodded slowly and said he would do the same. We sat in silence after that. Two strangers bound together by heartbreak. Two people who never asked for this war but had to fight anyway. When I left the cafe, I felt something shift inside me. The pain was still there, the anger still raw. But now it wasn't just mine. It was shared. And somehow that made it easier to carry. Because I wasn't alone anymore in this hell. Someone else understood every jagged edge of betrayal. And together, we weren't just broken spouses, we were witnesses. We were proof driving back to the motel. I thought about them. Were they still together? Were they blaming each other now? Were they watching their lies crumble? The thought didn't make me smile. It didn't heal me. But it reminded me of something important. Their downfall wasn't my responsibility. My healing was. And that's where my focus would stay. Back at the motel. I opened my journal, a book I hadn't touched in months, and I started writing line after line poured out of me, not polished, not perfect, just raw. The pain, the rage, the betrayal, the plans for the future. It all spilled onto the page until my hand cramped, and when I looked at what I had written, I realized it wasn't just venting. It was rebuilding, word by word, sentence by sentence. I was piecing myself back together. That night I slept without nightmares. Not because the pain was gone, but because I had direction. Now, I had a path forward. And even though it was paved with fire and broken glass, I knew I could walk it. Because I wasn't the same woman who opened that bedroom door. I was someone new, someone harder, someone who would never be fooled again. The call came late, the next morning. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. When I pressed accept, his voice spilled through the speaker. Sloan, please just hear me out. It was my husband. The sound of his voice twisted my stomach into knots. Calm, steady. Like he had rehearsed it. Like he thought a few words could erase what I saw with my own eyes. I didn't say a word. The silence made him rush to fill it. I made a mistake, he said. One mistake. Can't we talk about it? One mistake. That's what he called months of betrayal. That's what he called sneaking my best friend into our bed. I finally spoke. You need to call my lawyer. Not me. And I hung up before he could respond. Minutes later, the text started. Long paragraphs of apologies. Half explanations mixed with promises. I'll change. I'll do therapy. It meant nothing. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded everything straight to my lawyer. Documentation, evidence of desperation. Every word he sent made my case stronger, and every word reminded me how weak he really was when cornered. That afternoon, I went back to the house, not to see him, but to collect what was mine. The moment I pulled into the driveway, memories tried to crush me. Barbecues on the lawn. Christmas. Lights strung around the porch. Laughter echoing from the windows. Now it felt haunted, like the walls themselves knew the lies whispered inside them. I unlocked the door and stepped into silence. The air heavy with ghosts of what used to be. He wasn't home good. I didn't want to see him yet. Not until I was ready. Room by room, I packed what I needed. Clothes, important documents, photo albums that still mattered to me. Every drawer I opened felt like opening a wound. But I forced myself to keep moving, because this wasn't about mourning anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine. About showing myself that I wasn't trapped here. When I reached our bedroom, my chest tightened. The bed looked neatly made, but I couldn't unsee what had happened. On it, her shoes under the frame, her smirk etched into my brain, my husband's frozen face when he realized the camera was rolling. I almost broke down. But instead, I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Not of the betrayal, but of me standing, tall in that room. Proof to myself that I had survived walking back into the crime scene. As I carried boxes to my car, a neighbor waved. She looked curious, concerned, maybe even suspicious. I waved back politely, but kept walking. Small-town gossip would explode soon enough. And when it did, I wanted the story to be mine, not theirs. Back at the motel, I spread everything out on the bed. It felt strange. My whole life condensed into a few bags and boxes. But it also felt liberating, like I had shed a skin that no longer fit. I poured a glass of cheap wine and stared at the ceiling, thinking about what came next. Because surviving betrayal was one thing, but living after it was another challenge entirely. That night, another message arrived. This time, not from him, from her. She used a new number, a new attempt to crawl back into my life. The message was venom, disguised as apology. You ruined everything. Why couldn't you just look the other way? We could have kept this quiet. We could have all been happy. The audacity made me laugh out loud. Happy. She thought destroying 2 marriages was happiness. I didn't reply. I blocked her again, because silence was the sharpest weapon I could wield against her now. The next morning I had a meeting with my lawyer. He spread papers across his desk, financials, property records, texts, the video. He explained how strong my case was, how quickly we could move. Every sentence felt like bricks stacking into a fortress around me, a fortress made of truth and evidence, a fortress they couldn't break. Walking out of his office, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole, but lighter. Because I had direction. And direction was power. They thought they broke me. But really, they handed me the blueprint for my freedom. That night, when my phone rang again, I didn't hesitate. I let it go to voicemail. Because I knew exactly who it was. And I knew exactly what he would say. But none of it mattered anymore. Not his excuses, not her apologies, not the wreckage they left behind. Because for the first time in weeks, I realized something. The story wasn't about them anymore. It was about me, and I wasn't done writing it. 2 days passed before I finally agreed to meet him face to face. Not because I wanted closure. Not because I wanted answers. But because I needed to look him in the eyes one last time and remind myself why I was walking away. We met at the house. Neutral territory didn't feel right anymore. I wanted him surrounded by the walls he had poisoned with betrayal. When I pulled into the driveway, he was already waiting on the porch, hands in his pockets, eyes down like a child waiting to be scolded. For a moment, I almost laughed. This man who had played me for months looked so small now. So powerless, so desperate, I stepped out of the car and walked past him without a word. The door creaked open, and I went inside. The air smelled of stale coffee and cologne. But underneath it all was something rotten. The stink of lies never really left a place. He followed me into the living room. "Sloan," he said softly, like speaking my name might soften me. I didn't respond. Instead, I set my bag on the table and pulled out the envelope from my lawyer. I slid it across the table toward him. His hands trembled when he opened it. His eyes scanned the pages, divorce papers, reality in black and white. He looked up at me, panic flashing in his eyes. "We don't have to do this. We can fix this. Please." I finally spoke, my voice steady, like steel. "Fix what?" "The months of lies. The nights you told me you were working late when you were with her. The betrayal in our own bed. Tell me how you fix that." His mouth opened, but no words came out, because there was no fixing it. There was no patching over the crater he had blown into my life. I leaned forward and locked eyes with him. You destroyed everything. And now you're shocked that I won't play Wife of the Year, while you play family man with my best friend. Do you even hear yourself? His face flushed red, from shame or anger. I couldn't tell. But it didn't matter, because I was past caring. He tried again. She meant nothing. It was a mistake. I almost laughed. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is leaving the stove on. Sleeping with my best friend repeatedly is not a mistake. It's a choice. And you made it over and over again. Silence stretched between us, thick, heavy, suffocating. Finally, he said, "What do you want from me?" I stood up. Nothing. I don't want anything from you. That's the point. You've already given me everything I need. I held up my phone. The video still saved, the texts still archived, the evidence stacked against him like bricks. I don't need your words. I have proof, and proof is louder than your lies. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked truly broken, not because of guilt, but because he realized he had no control anymore. And losing control terrified him more than losing me ever could. I walked toward the door without looking back. But as my hand touched the knob, his voice cracked behind me. I still love you. The words hung in the air like smoke. Toxic, suffocating. I didn't turn around. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my face. I just said quietly, "You don't love me. You love what I gave you, and now it's gone." Then I walked out. The cool air hit my face as I stepped outside. Relief washed over me. Finality for the first time since the betrayal. I felt like I could breathe without choking. I walked to my car, opened the door, and before driving away, I looked back at the house one last time. Not with longing, not with sadness, but with resolve. This wasn't my home anymore. This was the place my old life ended, and my new one began. That night, back at the motel, I poured another glass of wine. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, tired eyes, hollow cheeks. But beneath all that, I saw something new. Strength. It wasn't polished. It wasn't pretty. But it was mine. And it was growing every single day. I whispered to myself, "You survived this. You'll survive everything else." And for the first time, I believed it. The morning after confronting him, I woke with a strange calm, like the storm had passed, but left a fire smoldering in its wake. I wasn't content just walking away. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they did, not just lose me, lose the comfort, lose the image, lose everything they thought they could keep while betraying me in secret. I sat at the small motel desk with my laptop glowing in the dark. Their world was built on lies, and lies collapse easiest when you shine light on them. I started, with her social media smiles and perfect captions, date nights with her husband, vacations where she claimed to be with me. I knew the truth behind every photo, and I knew exactly how to expose it. One by one, I downloaded the images, one by one. I matched them to the dates when she was sneaking into my house. The receipts lined up like dominoes ready to fall. Then I moved to his accounts. Work dinners he bragged about, online golf trips with the guys. All covers for the nights I was home alone waiting. For him, I screenshotted everything. Every hole in his alibis, every contradiction between his words and his actions. It wasn't about posting it publicly. Not yet. It was about building a case so airtight. Even their lies couldn't slip through by. Noon, I had a folder bursting with evidence. I sent it to my lawyer, labeled clearly, organized neatly, proof stacked on top of proof. He replied within minutes, "This is gold, Sloan, pure leverage. We can use this to negotiate everything. Custody of the house, financial settlement, Clean break on your terms. Reading those words lit something inside me, not just relief power. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting, I was acting, and they had no idea what was coming. That evening I met with her husband again. We sat in the same cafe. But this time, we weren't just two broken people nursing wounds. We were allies. He had his own folder of evidence. Credit card charges, receipts from hotels, lies she couldn't spin her way out of. We shared everything. Piece by piece, we laid out the puzzle of their betrayal. When it was all lined up on the table, the picture was clear. They thought they were clever, but really they were sloppy. And now their sloppiness would be their undoing. We talked strategy. How to move quietly while they still thought they were in control. How to let them hang themselves with their own arrogance. The plan wasn't revenge for the sake of revenge. It was justice, measured, calculated, the kind that left no room for doubt when the truth finally exploded. Walking back to my car afterward, I felt a chill run through me. Not fear, anticipation. Because I knew the days of feeling powerless were over. Now every move I made had weight. Every step pushed them closer, to the edge they didn't even see yet. Back at the motel, I poured another glass of wine and scrolled through my phone. Her latest post was a smiling selfie with my husband, captioned "Date night with my favorite person." The audacity made me laugh, because behind that smug smile she had no idea I had already sent the video to my lawyer. No idea her husband had a folder of receipts ready to crush her. No idea her perfect little facade was crumbling while she flaunted it online. I typed a comment. My finger hovered over the post button, but then I stopped. Not yet. Timing was everything, and patience was my sharpest weapon now. I closed my phone and whispered to myself, let them smile. Let them smirk. Because soon the truth will wipe those smiles, clean off their faces, and when it does, I'll be watching. Not broken, not begging, but standing tall while their lies burn around them. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Because revenge wasn't just a dream anymore. It was in motion. And nothing could stop it now. 2 mornings later, I drove past my old house. The blinds were drawn, but both their cars were in the driveway. For a second, my stomach twisted, a reminder of everything they stole from me. But instead of sadness, I felt anticipation, because I knew soon those walls would not protect them. Not from the truth, not from me. I parked down the street and pulled out my phone. The video still sat in my gallery like a loaded weapon. One click and their perfect little lie could shatter. But I didn't send it yet. Not until I knew the timing was right. Instead, I opened the file of evidence again. Every receipt, every text, every hole in their story. Each piece was a brick in the tower I was building, and I wasn't about to knock it down before it reached its full height. That afternoon, I met with my lawyer again. He spread the papers across his desk. His eyes scanned each one carefully. "This is airtight. Sloan," he said. "They don't stand a chance. We'll file by the end of the week." Hearing that gave me a rush of calm I hadn't felt in months. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming control, piece by piece. When I left the office, my phone buzzed. It was him. I ignored the call, but he left. A voicemail. His voice sounded shaky. He begged for one last chance. He said he was losing everything, that we could rebuild if I just forgave him. I deleted it without listening to the end. Because forgiveness wasn't on the table. Not for him. Not for her. That night, I couldn't resist checking her social media again. There she was, smiling at a bar, glass of wine in her hand. Her caption read, "Girls' Night." I laughed because I knew the truth. Her husband had already told me she wasn't with friends. She was with mine. The lies dripped off her page like poison, but poison always kills the one who drinks it, and she was gulping it down without realizing. The next morning, I took a different kind of step. I emailed myself copies of everything, a backup, in case they tried anything desperate. Because people who live in lies panic when the walls start closing in, and I wanted to be ready for their panic, prepared for the moment. They realized the game was over. Later that day, I got a text from her husband. He wrote, "It's time." He was right. We couldn't wait forever. We had to move before they suspected how much we knew. We agreed to file simultaneously. 2 betrayals, 2 divorces, 2 bombs dropping on the same day. The thought of it sent a chill through me, but not a fear of power. That evening, I drove past the house again. This time I didn't stop. I just slowed down enough to see the 2 of them through the window, sitting on the couch, smiling like nothing was wrong, like their world wasn't seconds. Away from collapse, I whispered to myself, smile while you can, because the truth is already knocking at your door, back at the motel. I poured wine and stared at the ceiling. The waiting was the hardest part, but patience was my ally now. Patience meant control. And control was something they would never have again. Not over me. Not over their lies. Not over their perfect little illusion. That night, as I drifted to sleep, I pictured it. The moment they realized the game was up. The moment their smirks disappeared. And for the first time, I didn't feel broken, replaying the betrayal. I felt powerful because I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the storm. And they had no idea it was already here. The morning the papers were filed, the sky felt different. Crisp cold, sharp with the weight of something final. I drove to the courthouse with my lawyer, signed my name again and again until the pen nearly slipped from my hand. Every stroke of ink felt like cutting a tie. Every page another piece of freedom. By the time it was done, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. It was official. The beginning of the end, walking out of the building. I checked my phone. A message from her husband lit up the screen. Filed mine too. That was it. The bombs had dropped. They just didn't know it yet. By afternoon, my husband started calling over and over, back to back, like a man drowning, reaching for anything to keep him afloat. I let every call ring out. The voicemails piled up. His voice cracked more with each one. First begging, then apologizing, then angry, then begging again. The cycle of a man who knew the walls were closing in, and there was nothing left to grab onto around. 6 that evening, I got a message from her, not on her phone, from a fake account. But I knew it was her, instantly. Why are you doing this? We could have worked this out quietly. You didn't have to blow it all up. The desperation almost made me laugh, as if I hadn't walked in on her with my husband. As if I owed her silence after she carved me open, I didn't reply, because silence was sharper than any words I could have thrown at her. Later that night, my lawyer called. They'd received the notice. He said by morning both of them would know everything. The video, the receipts, the lies stacked in black and white. It would all be laid bare in legal language they couldn't twist or deny. I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted the empty motel room. Because finally, it wasn't just me carrying the truth. It was out in the world, and it was heavy enough to crush them. The next day, the explosion hit. Her husband texted me. She's begging me not to leave. She's crying nonstop, but I'm done. I sent back only 2 words. Stay strong, because this wasn't about pity anymore. It was about closure. And closure sometimes looks like walking away without looking back. By noon, my husband showed up at the motel. He banged on the door, loud enough for the neighbors to peek through their curtains. "Sloan, open up. We can fix this," he shouted. I stayed silent on the other side, listening to the panic in his voice, the rage bubbling beneath it. When he realized I wouldn't answer, he slid a note under the door. The paper trembled when I picked it up. "Please don't do this. Please don't destroy us. We can be happy again." I ripped it in half without reading further. Because there was no us anymore. Only him drowning in the wreckage he created. That evening, her husband called again. He sounded calmer, stronger. "I told her it's over," he said. "She tried to spin it. She blamed you. She blamed him. But the more she talked, the more obvious it was. She doesn't regret what she did. She regrets being caught." I told him I understood, because that was exactly how my husband sounded too. Sorry not for the betrayal, but for the fallout. That night, I sat on the bed in the motel room, the glow of my phone lighting the dark. I scrolled through their old photos, one last time. The smiles, the fake happiness, the illusion of perfection. And I realized something. They could have all of it now. The house, the memories, even each other, because none of it mattered anymore, not compared to the freedom in my chest, the strength in my voice, the fire in my heart. I whispered to myself, this is what survival looks like. Not just walking away, but walking taller than before. And as I closed my eyes, I knew the final step was near. Not revenge for the sake of pain, but justice pure and undeniable, and they were about to taste every drop of it. The morning of the hearing arrived like thunder. I dressed simply. Black blazer, crisp, white shirt, hair pulled back. No makeup beyond what I needed to look awake, because I didn't want to dazzle anyone. I wanted to be seen for what I was, a woman who had been betrayed. A woman who had survived. A woman ready to end it. When I stepped into the courthouse lobby, I saw him immediately. My husband slumped in a chair suit, wrinkled tie, crooked eyes, bloodshot. He looked smaller than I remembered, like the lies had been feeding him, and now they were gone. He stood when he saw me, but I walked right past without slowing. The slam of my heels on the tile louder than his broken whisper. "Sloan, please." In the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Her husband sat across the aisle. He gave me a small nod. We were soldiers in the same war, and today was the final battle. When the judge entered, we all stood. And then it began. My lawyer spoke first. Confident, calm, cutting through every excuse before it could form. The video played, the receipts stacked in neat piles, the texts glowing on the projector screen, every lie exposed, every betrayal, undeniable. My husband shifted in his seat. Her face went pale, their smirks were gone, replaced by the hollow look of people watching their world collapse. When her lawyer tried to defend her, the judge cut him off. The evidence is clear. The words echoed like church bells. Final, undeniable. The gavel might as well have been a hammer shattering the illusion they had built. When it was over, I walked out of that courtroom free, not just legally, but spiritually. The chains of betrayal broke in the moment the truth stood taller than their lies. Her husband walked beside me. Neither of us smiled. Neither of us celebrated. We didn't need to, because justice doesn't need confetti. Justice just needs truth. Outside the courthouse, reporters hovered, whispers already swirling in town. I didn't stop to feed them. I didn't need headlines. I already had closure, and closure doesn't need an audience. That evening, I returned to the motel one last time, packed the last of my bags, loaded the car, stood in the doorway, staring at the small space that had been my refuge. It wasn't glamorous, but it had saved me. It was the cocoon I had rebuilt myself inside. And now it was time to emerge. I drove until the city lights faded behind me. Windows down, music, loud wind tangling my hair. For the first time in months, I felt alive. Truly alive. Not surviving. Not waiting. Living every mile between me and that house was another piece of healing. I stopped at a diner off the highway, ordered coffee and pie. The waitress smiled at me like I was just another traveler passing through. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't broken anymore. I wasn't defined by betrayal anymore. I was just Sloane, a woman who had walked through fire and come out the other side. Later that night, I checked my phone one last time. A message from him sat unread. A message from her, too, both begging, both blaming, both desperate. I deleted them without opening, because their words no longer mattered. They had lost the right to take space in my life. I whispered into the empty car. I win, not because I destroyed them, but because I survived them. And survival was the sweetest revenge of all. As the stars stretched above me, I felt peace settle into my bones. Not the fragile peace of pretending everything was fine, but the solid peace of knowing I had faced the worst and walked away stronger. And I promised myself one last thing. Never again would I let anyone dim my fire. Never again would I mistake betrayal for love, because love doesn't crawl into shadows. Love doesn't hide under beds. Love stands tall in the light, and that's where I was headed now. Into the light, into my future, into a life that was finally mine again.